Hello everyone, my name is Ágnes Juhász. I'm a psychologist and working for Mental Health for Wellbeing Foundation and also for Eötvös Loránd University. In this following short presentation, I'm going to talk to you about resilience, burnout prevention, and the relationship between the two. So let us start with looking at how do we define resilience? What is resilience? So basically, resilience appears in adverse conditions when things are not going that very well, when we are under high level of stress, or even in a crisis or trauma. And it is a little bit more than overcoming a stress situation. It's coming out of a crisis with no loss, with properly working functions. The origin of the concept or the term was in studies of children growing up in very adverse circumstances, but still thriving. So researchers became interested what makes it possible for these children to have no psychological symptoms or mental health issues, even in living in such adverse circumstances. So they named this, at that moment, still unknown set of factors and competencies resilience. There are several different conceptualizations of resilience. According to one of those, resilience is a developmental outcome when the child's development is better than expected based on his or her circumstances. According to another conceptualization, resilience is a set of competencies that what we use when under stress. And still another one, pretty similar to the previous one, is to look at resilience as coping strategies that we can use for recovering from a trauma to be able to cope with a crisis. So an important question is, if we define, as we just saw, resilience by its effects, so basically that it helps us to overcome a crisis situation with no loss, how do we know if someone is resilient? What are the psychosocial factors that are associated with resilience? How can we recognize resilience in someone? According to studies, there are several so-called psychosocial factors that are associated with higher level of resilience. These are the factors that serve as preventing factors, protecting factors under high level of stress. So let's see a little bit closer what are these psychosocial factors. First set of factors are positive emotions. Joy, pride, love, and these kinds of positive emotions, and optimism and humor. And as I told, according to several researches, higher levels of positive emotions can protect us from developing psychological, mental health issues, even in adverse conditions. How can positive emotions help us? So, for example, they can lower the level of automatic arousal, and this way make us thinking more flexible, make us capable to rely more on our creativity, and that way to cope more successfully with the stress factors. Humor, for example, also can help us reframe the situation to look the positive side of the things. Positive emotions also can provide us with a break in the negativity, where we can recharge a little bit our energies. Another important psychosocial factor correlating with high levels of resilience is cognitive flexibility. So basically, resilient people have a kind of special way they explain things happening with them. So instead of looking at the negative events, stressful events, and their effects as something that cannot be changed and that will affect all areas of their life, and to blame themselves or for others for these events, They are rational, realistic in blaming themselves or others. So they put blame where it really realistically belongs to. They also think about negative events as temporary things, things that can be changed, and they do not consider those negative events to affect all areas of their life. And this way of explaining things makes them more successful in coping and more protected against mental health issues. They are also capable of reappraising the events to find a positive even in crisis situations. Acceptance is again an important factor, to accept the things that we cannot change, as it is illustrated in the Serenity player of Anonymous Alcoholics, which goes something like that. Oh, God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to recognize the difference between the two. Another important factor is finding the meaning in life in general, and religion and spirituality usually gives this framework of meaning which can make even traumas to be more understandable and acceptable. And interestingly, altruism is also a protective factor. So people who take genuine care of others were found in several studies to be more protected against mental health issues, symptoms and illnesses, even in high levels of stress, like in war situations. Yet another important factor is social support. So people high in resilience have generally bigger network of social support, or the level of support they receive is higher. How can social support help us in overcoming stressful situations? So for example, if we have social support, it will increase the level of positive emotions, like joy, love, happiness. It will decrease the level of negative emotions like depression or loneliness, and it will also give us some role models on how to cope with these situations, to learn concrete strategies. Will decrease the risk of engaging in negative and risky behaviors like alcohol or drug abuse. And yet another important factor in resilience is to apply an active coping style. So there are different ways to cope with stressful situations, but highly resilient people tend to use active coping style more frequently, which means to focus on the problem itself, to try to change the situation if possible, to reappraise the events in a positive way, to look for social support, and also other strategies like to do exercise and training to cope with the emotional burden of the situation. Apart from these factors, there are also other predictors of resilience which belong more to the category of skills, like the ability to make realistic plans and to follow these plans to make the necessary steps to reach our goals. Also, self-confidence or self-efficacy can be important predictor of resilience, good communication and problem-solving skills, and emotional management. So now that we defined what is resilience, let's see what is burnout. Burnout is a syndrome of exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced professional efficacy. It has three components. The first of that is emotional exhaustion, which is strain, chronic fatigue, when we have no more access to our emotional resources due to work. The second component is depersonalization, which is when we put a kind of a distant attitude we have generally towards work and also to the people we work with, to the recipients of our work. And the third component is reduced personal accomplishment. That is when we ourselves feel that we are no more capable of the level of performance we used to be able to accomplish. So now that we identified what is resilience, what is burnout, let's see what is the relationship between the two. So to put it very simple, chronic stress on the longer run will lead to burnout. But resilience can jump in this relationship and act as a moderator between stress and burnout, so to prevent burnout even in chronic stress situations. But, there is a but, chronic stress on the long run can even decrease resilience. What comes out of this? Basically, when we are focusing on interventions with the aim of preventing burnout, we need to go to two different directions. We need to promote resilience, but we also need to decrease chronic stress. So is it possible to promote resilience? Is it something we burn with, or is it something we can learn? So the answer is yes, it's possible to promote resilience. It's not a personality trait like extroversion, for example. There are strategies with which you can build your resilience. On this slide, you can see a list of these strategies provided by the American Psychological Associations. So if you take a closer look to the elements of this list, you can notice that they are connected to the factors we have just identified as factors associated with resilience. And let me just show you for a moment our complex model, how we address burnout prevention and resilience promotion in the workplaces. As we have discussed before, in order to successfully prevent burnout, we need to go in two ways: to decrease chronic stress and to increase resilience. We address burnout prevention in any organization on three different layers. So we support the employees, we support their managers in coping with their own stresses and also in helping their employees to prevent burnout. And we also address the organizational framework to rearrange it to a framework which prevents burnout of the employees. So as the aim of the HEART project is with a combination of different methodologies to prevent burnout and to increase or promote resilience, it is important to see and identify how we can do that with the different exercises that were selected into the program of these 2 days. So you are going to be able to experiment and collect your own learnings and identify what particular exercise promote what psychosocial factor for you that were associated with higher levels of resilience. So I wish you a very fruitful and nice experiment with our outputs and the exercises. And that was it from me. Thank you very much.